You've tried growing sprouts before. Maybe you used one of those mason jar kits or followed a tutorial online. You soaked the beans, you rinsed them, you waited, and what did you get? Slimy, thin, sad little threads that smelled off after 2 days. Or worse, a jar of mush that went straight into the compost. Frustrating, right? Now, here's what got me curious. In Korean households, they grow bean sprouts all the time, not as some special project, but as a regular part of putting food on the table, and their sprouts come out crisp, plump, and perfect in about 3 days. No fancy equipment, no grow lights, no special seeds, just mung beans, a dark container, and a watering rhythm that most of us have never been taught. When I finally learned what they were doing differently, I realized I'd been making the same mistakes for years. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how Korean home cooks grow kongnamul, that's kongnakmul, and how you can do the same thing in your own kitchen starting tonight. I'll be honest with you. For the longest time, I thought sprouting was straightforward. Soak some beans, rinse them now and then, wait for the magic to happen. But my results were inconsistent at best. Sometimes I'd get decent sprouts. More often, I'd end up with a slimy mess of sprouts so thin and stringy, they weren't worth eating. Then I started paying attention to how Korean families approach this. What I discovered wasn't some complicated technique. It was a rhythm, a specific way of doing things that's been passed down through generations of home cooks. Once I understood the why behind each step, everything changed. My sprouts went from disappointing to genuinely impressive, and it happened faster than I expected. Here's what Korean home cooks understand about growing kongnamul that most Western sprouting guides miss entirely. They treat it as a relationship with the beans, not a set it and forget it project. The sprouts need consistent attention, but not constant fussing. They need water, but they can't sit in water. They need darkness, but they also need airflow. It's a balance, and once you find it, the beans practically grow themselves. In Korean households, kongnamul isn't some exotic ingredient. It's an everyday staple as common as rice. Families have been growing it at home for generations because fresh sprouts taste completely different from the bagged ones at the grocery store. There's a crispness and a clean, nutty flavor that you simply cannot get from sprouts that have been sitting in plastic for a week. The method I'm about to share with you is how Korean grandmothers have done it for decades. It's simple, it's precise, and it works. Let's start with the beans themselves. You want to use mung beans, the small green ones you can find at most Asian grocery stores or online. Look for beans that are uniform in color without a lot of broken pieces or discoloration. Fresh beans sprout better, so if your bag has been sitting in the pantry for 2 years, consider getting a new one. Here's a measurement that helps with planning. 1 cup of dry mung beans will yield approximately 4 cups of finished sprouts. That's a nice amount for a family, enough for a couple of meals. Start by rinsing your beans under cool water, picking out any that look damaged or shriveled. Then place them in a bowl and cover them with about 3 inches of room temperature water. The beans are going to absorb a lot of liquid and swell to nearly double their size, so make sure you use a bowl with plenty of room. Let them soak for 8 to 12 hours. I usually start mine before bed and they're ready by morning. You'll know they're properly soaked when they visibly plumped up and the skins have softened. Some will have started to split slightly, and that's exactly what you want to see. That little split is the first sign that germination is underway. Now let's talk about your sprouting container, because this is where a lot of Western methods go wrong. Korean home cooks use containers with drainage holes at the bottom. This is critical. The sprouts need to be rinsed thoroughly, but they cannot sit in standing water. Standing water is what causes rot and that unpleasant slimy texture. You can use a dedicated sprouting container, a colander set inside a larger bowl, or even a clean plant pot with drainage holes. Some people use a large plastic food container and poke holes in the bottom with a heated nail or drill. Whatever you choose, make sure water can flow through freely. Line the bottom with a clean cotton cloth or a layer of cheesecloth. This helps cushion the beans and keeps them from falling through larger drainage holes. Drain your soaked beans and spread them evenly across the cloth in a layer no more than 1 to 2 inches deep. If you pile them too thick, the beans in the middle won't get enough airflow and can start to rot. Now here's the key. Cover the container with a lid or a dark cloth. The beans need complete darkness to grow those long, plump white stems. Light will make them turn green and develop leaves, which isn't what we're after. Place the whole setup somewhere dark, like inside a cabinet or pantry. This next part is where Korean home cooks really shine, and it's the step that made the biggest difference in my results. The watering ritual. Every 8 to 12 hours, you're going to thoroughly rinse your sprouts. Not a light misting, not a quick splash. A complete, generous rinse with cool water that soaks through all the beans and drains out the bottom. The rhythm matters here. Too much time between rinses and the sprouts dry out and stop growing. Too little time and you risk keeping them too wet. 8 to 12 hours is the sweet spot that Korean households have settled on through generations of practice. Here's exactly how to do it. Remove the lid or cloth, pour cool water slowly and evenly over the entire surface of the beans until water is flowing freely from the drainage holes. Let it drain completely. This should take a minute or two. Then cover them back up and return them to darkness. That's it. Twice a day, roughly when you wake up and before bed, you give them a good rinse. By the end of day 1, you should see little white tails emerging from most of the beans. By day 2, those tails will be growing noticeably longer. By day 3, you'll have sprouts that are 2 to 3 inches long with plump white stems and small yellow tips. That's your harvest window. Temperature plays a bigger role than most people realize. Korean households typically keep their sprouting beans at room temperature, somewhere between 68 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Too cold and germination slows way down. Too hot and you invite bacteria and mold. If your kitchen runs warm in summer, you might find a cooler spot like a basement or a cabinet away from appliances. In winter, avoid placing your container near cold windows or drafty areas. Consistency matters more than hitting a perfect number. The beans can handle some variation, but dramatic swings in temperature will stress them and affect your results. Keep checking on them during your watering ritual. If you notice any off smells or slimy texture, that's usually a sign that drainage isn't adequate or temperatures got too warm. Healthy sprouts should smell clean and fresh, almost like cut grass or raw peanuts. If you're finding this helpful and want to see more of how other cultures approach growing food at home, take a second to subscribe. I've been learning so much from these traditional methods, and there's plenty more to share. Now let me walk you through some common mistakes. Here's where I see most people go wrong, and I made every one of these mistakes myself before I learned the Korean approach. The first mistake is inconsistent watering. In jar sprouting methods, people often rinse once a day or whenever they remember. Korean home cooks rinse every 8 to 12 hours without fail. That consistency is what produces plump, crisp sprouts instead of thin, stringy ones. The beans are growing fast and they need that regular hydration to keep up. The second mistake is poor drainage. This is the big one. If your sprouts are sitting in even a small puddle of water, rot will set in quickly. The Korean method uses containers with holes specifically so water flows through and away. No standing water ever. The third mistake is exposing the sprouts to light. Every time you peek at them or leave them uncovered, you're signaling the beans to start photosynthesis. They'll turn green and start developing leaves, which changes the flavor and texture. Keep them in complete darkness, except during your brief watering sessions. The fourth mistake is overcrowding. Piling beans too deep means the ones in the center don't get airflow and can start to spoil. Keep your layer to 1 to 2 inches maximum, and you'll have much better results. Now here's a bonus. Technique that Korean home cooks use to get that extra crunch that makes homegrown kongnamul so special. On your final rinse before harvesting, use ice cold water. I mean really cold, straight from the refrigerator or with ice cubes added. Pour it slowly over the sprouts and let them sit in that cold rinse for about 5 minutes before draining. This cold shock firms up the cell walls and gives the sprouts an extra crisp snap when you bite into them. It's a small step that makes a noticeable difference, especially if you're planning to eat them fresh or lightly blanched in traditional Korean dishes. After the cold rinse, drain them thoroughly and store them in a container in the refrigerator. They'll keep for up to a week, though honestly, they're best within the first few days when that crunch is at its peak. That's the Korean method for growing kongnamul at home, 3 days from start to finish, using nothing more than mung beans, a container with drainage, darkness, and a simple watering rhythm. If you've struggled with sprouting before, I hope this gives you a fresh approach that actually works. The first batch might take a little adjustment as you dial in your setup and timing, but once you get the feel for it, you'll wonder why you ever bought sprouts from the store. I'd love to hear how it goes for you, so drop a comment and let me know. If this helped you, share it with someone else who might want to try growing their own. Thanks for spending time with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.